Did 9/11 happen in the Fallout universe? Based on the limited evidence we have, probably not. The Pentagon still exists in Fallout 3 as a citadel, but there's no memorial, not even a plaque acknowledging the September 11th attack. There's no mention of Al Qaeda or Osama bin Laden anywhere in Fallout, and many of the specific geopolitical circumstances that motivated the real world attacks are either absent or never established in the Fallout timeline. But I think the most interesting evidence actually points to the airports. There's almost no security to speak of. McCarran has what appears to be a single x ray machine, but x ray screening at airports predates 9/11 anyway, so it doesn't really tell us anything. The Boston airport is even stranger. I couldn't find any security checkpoint whatsoever. There's even a skeleton sitting at the terminal with a gun in his luggage. And apparently, they weren't too concerned about hijackings either, because Fallout's passenger aircraft don't even appear to separate the passengers from the pilots. You can just walk right into the cockpit and take control if you want. Now, obviously, these are video game environments. Bethesda probably wasn't thinking about TSA regulations when they designed a nuclear powered airplane. But taken together, Fallout's America really doesn't look like a country whose aviation system went through a massive security change that followed 9/11. So I think it's unlikely that the specific events of 9/11 happened in Fallout. But that led me to a much more interesting question. Why is terrorism so uncommon in Fallout's history in the first place? Major non state terrorist attacks are surprisingly difficult to find. One of the only examples comes from the old Fallout timeline where a terrorist nuclear weapon destroys Tel Aviv in 2053, and that isn't even considered canon anymore. Which is strange because terrorism should arguably be an even bigger threat in Fallout than it is in our own world. Nuclear technology is everywhere. It's in cars, generators, weapons, robots. It's in everything. Obviously, you can't just rip the reactor out of your Corvega and build a nuclear bomb, but when nuclear technology and radioactive materials are so integrated this deeply into civilian society, you'd expect terrorism and sabotage to be an enormous national security concern. You don't even need nuclear technology to see the problem. The Oklahoma City bombing used relatively accessible materials to create a truck bomb that killed 168 people. Now imagine the potential for destruction in a society with Fallout's technology and infrastructure. So, why isn't terrorism one of the biggest threats facing America? I think the difference is simply geopolitical. In our own timeline, the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991. For the next decade, the United States has no comparable superpower rival. Then 9/11 happens, and terrorism became one of America's defining national security concerns. The Soviet Union survives, and eventually China eclipses as an even greater threat to the United States. Instead of spending the final decades before the Great War primarily worried about terrorism, the American government is obsessed with competing against communist powers, preventing sabotage and infiltration, producing propaganda, and keeping the population terrified of an inevitable communist takeover. So even if terrorism was a threat in Fallout, it was competing for attention with resource shortages, economic collapse, civil unrest, the annexation of Canada, the Sino American War, and the possibility of another nuclear superpower could end the world at any time. At that point, some nutcase blowing up a building isn't exactly on the top of the list. So, did 9/11 happen in Fallout? We can't know for certain, but there's no direct reference to it. Fallout's airports don't seem to reflect some of the security changes that followed it. And the America we see in Fallout developed a very different national security obsession. Maybe terrorism wasn't absent from Fallout at all. Maybe there are just much bigger things to worry about. And considering what happened to the world, they were probably right.